This Hunter Stasis build has to be one of my all-time favourites. I mean, enemies are going to remain frozen for stupidly long periods of time, whilst benefiting you in multiple ways, allowing you to become a true stasis god. Okay, yeah, that was a bit extreme, but it's true. Anyway, this is your 5th build video of the series, featuring a new, or should I say, updated stasis build for the Hunter. Timestamps are below, but guys, before we start, be sure to check out my sponsor over at Awaya if you want to get your hands on some cheap silver for Destiny 2. And now as always, rate, comment, sub and share, and let's start. Now as always, if you like these builds here, you should know that I do them every week. Playlist below if you want to see more. But with this Hunter build, you're going to be getting the following benefits. Enhanced Stasis Abilities, allowing things like your slow abilities to last longer, almost infinite melee abilities which stun overloads, and it's actually pretty funny because once they're unstunned, they can actually become frozen, and then you just stun them again. Easy. But you'll have increased DPS with arc weapons, you'll chain ability energy with abilities, get more super energy faster, and overall this build just works really smoothly in all types of content, whether that's a Master Nightfall or a solo Legend Lost Sector. The way you would use this build is by running into a bunch of adds and then throw your melee ability. In Legend activities or lower, this will kill the add or adds, and it will drop stasis shards as well as an elemental well. Pick those up to regain ability energy and become Charge of Light, and then you'll just keep repeating the process as much as you want to spam those abilities. But when you're ready for some form of damage on a tougher enemy, either stun, slow and or freeze them, then shift and deal your DPS. Whilst you're doing all this, you should be able to make life so much easier when it comes to fighting champions and bosses. Ideally you would use your abilities on those tougher enemies though, and kill them before the slow ability expires. This way, most of the time, you'll get your abilities back a lot faster. One of the best things about this build though is that when you stun an overload champion with that melee, you'll get that melee straight back. Meaning, because you have 2, you can use one for adds and then the other one for champions, and this will free up a mod slot for your armour. The other good thing is that when you throw your grenade on champions, they'll be slowed and frozen for a pretty long time, giving you enough time to react if you don't kill them in one stun. And although you can do this normally, with this build, you should be able to get most, if not all, your abilities back a lot faster once they're killed, whilst having increased DPS on those slowed targets. So taking a look at the build setup for the loadout, we want to use arc weapons to make the most out of this build. So your loadout recommendation for endgame when fighting overloads and barriers would be to use an anti-barrier auto rifle, any arc special and any arc heavy weapon. For this build design, I'll be using a Chroma Rush auto rifle, a Salvager Salvo grenade launcher, and a Wardcliff Coil rocket launcher. The other options are things like any arc rockets, machine guns, or even exotics like Thunderlord, Trinity Ghoul, or even Risk Runner. But you guys can really use anything, but to be the most effective, you want to use arc weapons. Now for the subclass, we are a Hunter Revenant Stasis build, so that is what we'll be running, which you'll want a Marksman's Dodge because getting our melee back shouldn't be too much of an issue, and then you'll want a Dusk-filled Grenade to slow enemies, which will benefit us in multiple ways. For the aspects, we'll be using Grim Harvest. This is to create stasis shards when defeating those slowed targets, and picking these up will give us melee energy. With this though, we have Touch of Winter, which will give us better dust-filled grenades, meaning it'll basically be a much bigger size. For those fragments, we have Whisper of Refraction to gain class energy when defeating slowed enemies, Whisper of Durance, where those slow abilities last longer. Definitely a top tier fragment right there in my opinion. But Whisper of Torment to gain grenade energy when we take damage, and Whisper of Hunger to increase the melee energy gained when picking up those stasis shards. Now these abilities are honestly no joke on its own, never mind having the mods to improve them. If you guys are struggling with champions, then this will be a saviour. But guys, if you don't have these aspects and fragments, you may want to visit the Exo Stranger on Europa to get started on some quests to unlock those upgrades. They are definitely worth it. Moving on though, the exotic we'll be using is the Mask of Bakris, and you can farm this out in those Legend and Master Lost sectors when the helmet is the daily reward. But this will allow us to shift instead of dodge, which reads, replace your Stasis subclass dodge ability with a longer range, faster moving shift that partly cloaks you during use. After shifting, your arc weapons deal increased damage to combatants for a short time, and you deal increased damage to all slowed or frozen combatants. This is why you want to use some good DPS arc weapons, as it will improve that DPS output even further, which will help you a lot in the endgame activities. But the mods we have with this are firstly Powerful Friends to gain at plus 20 mobility. Now if you don't need mobility, then don't use this mod, and instead use something like Font of Wisdom to improve your super recharge rate even further. But just make sure that once you have your full build set up, that your mobility will be over 100, as you'll want that class ability back as quick as possible. Now the other mods we have for this build are Hands On for bonus super energy on melee kills, And I should also mention that there's actually a cheaper version this season in the artifact, so you should use that one instead. But with this we also have our ammo finder mod for our heavy weapon. Adjust that to whatever heavy you are using. For the gauntlets we have elemental charge to become charger light when picking up those elemental wells, and we'll get 2 stacks as always because we will be picking up those stasis elemental wells created from our melee ability. But also with this we have our weapon loader mod for our arc energy weapon. Not really needed for our rockets as we will be shifting to reload those, but we also have our champion mods as well here, which will need to be either unstoppable or anti-barrier. Moving into the chest we have protective light. This is our charger light mod which will give us damage resistance when our shields are destroyed, consuming all stacks of charger light. And bear in mind that this needs to be slotted into void elemental armor. Next up with this we have our ammo reserve mods for a heavy weapon, that being a rocket launcher for my loadout specifically. And then for the leg armor we have melee well maker to spawn stasis elemental wells when getting kills with our melee ability, which again, as we have 2 of these, you want to always have one for the champion and one for adds when needed. And this is a new elemental well mod introduced this season, which is pretty OP in actually a lot of builds. And I will point out as well that if you don't want to use these elemental well mods, you can instead use Taken Charge and Shield Break Charge. 2 great mods for harder endgame content for becoming charged with light. But anyway, moving on, we do have our ammo scavenger mod for again our heavy weapon. Lastly, moving into the class, we have Well of Potency, where picking up those elemental wells that match our subclass will also grant us super energy. This is a new seasonal mod exclusively for Season of the Lost, so if you're watching this in a future season, adjust to what current stasis mods you have available. But with this mod, we also have another seasonal mod where we gain stasis ability energy when we or our fire team members stun champions, as well as our overload melee mod to actually stun them in the first place, and stunning them will give us our melee ability straight back, so we will always have that ability to stun them when needed. Just don't miss, or you might make life difficult. Anyway, the stats you want to max out are firstly mobility to get your dodge back as quick as possible, then strength, but if you use the build right you shouldn't really need to max this out, so I'd probably just go with discipline instead to get those dust filled grenades back quickly, as they can be really useful in the endgame. Now here is what my artifact setup looks like, but it does change depending on the build and what weapons I decide to use, as in season 15 right now, fusions are the current meta for the best boss DPS. Now overall with this build I'd probably rate it a good 8 or 9 out of 10. It definitely performs really well in PvE content, including those harder activities, because slowing and freezing enemies is never going to be a bad thing. But if you do use this build correctly and efficiently, then you will be able to cause some serious damage. Is it one of the best builds in the game? Well, that really depends on what you class as a top build, because each build acts completely different. So what you get with a build may never be exactly the same. But for what this thing can do, I'd say it's definitely up there with the top builds in Destiny 2 Season 15 currently, as a good PvE Hunter build. But guys, that is all for this new PvE Hunter Stasis build in Destiny 2 Season of the Lost in 2021. Next you should go check out the playlist below for more builds like this, as I cover them weekly, and update old builds to the relevant current season. But for now, give this one a try and let me know what you think, and as always, I'll catch you guys this weekend for the next build. Stay tuned.